Good morning, and welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Columbus. I am Jan Phillips, and my pronouns are she, her. I am a member of your Board of Trustees and part of the Anti-Racist Allies group within our congregation's Justice Action Ministry. It is such a pleasure to be here together. Today, we have gathered on the lands of the Adena, the Hopewell, the Wyandotte, the Miami, the Seneca, and the Cayuga peoples. Let us pause together in silence to honor their connections to the land that we call Central Ohio. Thank you. Please rise as you are willing and able for hymn number 1007 in the Teal book, There's a River Flowing in My Soul. Every Sunday in April, our worship services will explore the theme Awakening. We look forward to exploring this theme deeply together. Whether you are a first-timer or a long-time First UU superfan, we are so glad that you are here. Please sign in to let us know that you are here, either physically or virtually. We collect this information because it helps us to be proactive in connecting with you. You as well can use this to connect with us about your interests and your life events. Our hope is that this will become a natural part of your Sundays with us. You can access today's order of service, our Joys and Sorrows form, and the donation page for our offering by scanning the QR code that is up on the screen, or by visiting firstucolumbus.org/Sunday. We've got a lot of great stuff happening here at First UU, and you can find out more by joining our email list. A few highlights. Please take a look at the stewardship materials that are arriving in your mail. Your pledges are what make this thriving community possible. We are asking if you are able to increase your annual pledge by 5.9%. This 5.9% is the amount of Social Security's cost of living adjustment, or COLA, for 2022. This amount will help us to close the fair compensation gap a little more and will help us move forward on our goal of sustainability. It will also help with programs that we love, including one that is near and dear to my heart. This last Friday evening, All Souls Contra Dancing returned to Beach Hall. The hall was filled with dancers, musicians, and callers, and it brought tears to my eyes, the pure joy that was expressed through moving bodies, the music, and the spirit of community. Next, Sukkot Shalom, the Jewish faith community that shares our building, is participating in a nationwide interfaith action to combat climate change and has invited First UU to partner with them. On April 19th, a street Seder will be held downtown. Next, the Interfaith Association of Central Ohio, which is called ICO for short, is resuming its faith visitations with an event at a Hindu temple in Powell on Saturday, April 23rd. And finally, Ramadan Mubarak to all those who celebrate this sacred month. Friday News is a great resource to get the details about these events. Welcome again to this morning's service. Let us center ourselves as we listen to this morning's prelude. If you are joining us online, I invite you to bring your chalice closer so that we may kindle our flames together. Our chalice lighting words this morning are from Joy Harjo, the first Native American Poet Laureate of the United States. To pray, you open your whole self, to sky, to earth, to moon, to one whole voice that is you. And that know that there is more that you cannot see, can't hear, can't know, except in moments steadily growing, and in languages that aren't always sound, but other circles of motion like eagle that Sunday morning, circled in blue sky, in wind. We see you see ourselves and know that we must take the utmost care and kindness in all things. Our chalice is lit.
Good morning. I'm Caroline Mocharski, and I'm a youth member of this congregation. Activities for families with children will be happening after our worship service today. After the story, you will have the opportunity to join our families if you are interested. Our story today is called Stacy's Extraordinary Words, written by Stacey Abrahams and illustrated by Kit Thomas. Stacy loved words. She loves to read and write and say them. She adored fun words, long words, and unusual words. Words with wonderful histories and weird combinations. Whenever Stacy learned a new word, it was like making a new friend. First, she would find the dictionary. Then she would look up where the word had come from and learn all of its secrets. Then, did any of its letters hide and stay quiet, like the P in ptarmigan, a bird that lived in cold northern regions? Or were they strong, like the I in bright? Next, she wrote the word in her special notebook of extraordinary words. She practiced how to arrange the letters just right, how to sound them all out. That's because she loves spelling interesting words most of all. With her favorite words, she would try to remember their quirks, what made them special. When she saw a super long word like onomatopoeia, a funny word to describe the sounds of other words, she had to jump and sway. Words like duckling made her grin. Persnickety tickled her tongue. Sometimes Stacy thought words understood her better than people did. When she sat by herself during recess, they never teased her about being quiet, or about being clumsy when she fell, or awkward when the joke in her head came out wrong. When she read books under the covers, words never told her to go to sleep. Words understood why she was grumpy or anxious. In fact, words helped her explain what she was feeling, if only to herself. One day, Stacy's teacher, Miss Blakesley, asked her to wait after class. She squirmed in her seat because she was afraid, petrified. Another way to say really, really afraid. Usually, the teacher only kept a student after class because of a blunder, a mistake. Miss Blakesley called Stacy to her desk, and she returned her spelling test. A big red 100 sat at the top of the page. The teacher asked her, "Do you know what a spelling bee is?" "A really smart insect," Stacy jokes. The teacher smiled. A spelling bee is a contest where students compete to spell as many words correctly as they can. I would like for you to participate. Stacy couldn't believe it. Who else will be there? I am nominating you and Jake, she says. The spelling bee is next week. Stacy's excitement suddenly evaporated. Jake was not her friend. He was a bully who knew words too. Just yesterday, he had used a complicated word that made Suki cry. Last week, she heard him say something cruel to Zivko about his accent. Stacy thought it was stupendous that Zivko knew words in 2 different languages. Stacy knew as many words as Jake did. She wanted to say something when he said mean things to her friends, but she was intimidated, scared, because sometimes he said hurtful things to her too. She wished she had used her clever words to help Suki or Zivko or herself by speaking up. Perhaps at the spelling bee, she would be braver. At the spelling bee, she would not be silent. All week long, Stacy studied her words from school and the ones she kept in her notebook. Still, the spelling bee felt so far away as the longest word she had ever seen, sesquipedalian, a fancy way to describe words with lots of syllables. The days of the week were monotonous, torturous, and sluggish. Every hour felt longer and longer. Stacy wished the Whiskets' days away. Finally, the morning the spelling bee arrived, Stacy walked into the county library, holding her mother's hand tightly. Mama gave her a big hug and whispered into her ear, "Just do your best. Your dad and I are very proud of you." Stacy followed her teacher into the room where the other students waited until it was time to go. Then they went onto a stage. The announcer explained the rules. Kids stepped up to the microphone, one by one, to get their word. If they spelled it right, the announcer told them so. But if they made a mistake, the bell would ring. The student would have to leave the stage. No do-overs. Stacy's turn finally came. Her stomach ached with nervous energy, but she was ready. She said the word dither. She sounded out dither. Spell it. dither. That is correct. The announcer called the next student, and promptly, enormous, shutter, transportation, craggy, reception, village. Finally, only 3 contestants remained. Stacy and Jack and a girl from another school. The girl went up to spell her word. Ding! She had spelled chocolate without the second O. "We are down to our final 2 contestants," the announcer told the audience. Jake took a long time to spell accept. Stacy got the word squeezed, but she remembered the last letters she adored, like Q and Z. Jack tackled, clambering. Stacy conquered, disengaged. Then Jake defeated geometry. Stacy returned to the podium, ready to battle with her next word. She repeated it. She pronounced it. She spelled it. INSTANTANIOUS. Instantaneous. As she waited for the announcer, the bell dinged. "I'm sorry, that is incorrect. The proper spelling is..." Stacy couldn't hear the rest of what he said. Tears filled her eyes, but she stayed on stage like a good sport as Jack got his trophy and she received her 2nd place ribbon. Everyone congratulated Jack, and so did she. "Good job." Jake laughed and rolled his eyes. "At least I know the difference between an I and an E." Stacy felt embarrassed, and she refused to let Jack make her cry. "Well, I misspelled my word. I do know how to be courteous. You should try it." She turned away and went to find her mom. If today were like one of the stories Stacy loved most, she would have won, and Jake would have learned that words are a gift that shouldn't be used to hurt people. But things didn't always happen that way in real life. Sometimes change was harder, and it didn't always happen right away. Stacy felt a hand brush at her cheek. It opened her fist and smoothed out the ribbon. "Mama?" She put a butterscotch candy on top, Stacy's favorite kind. "You okay?" "I lost, but you came so far, nearly to the very end. Not far enough. I got the letter wrong, and I didn't win. I failed." "You only fail if you stop," her mother reminded her. "I know there's a word for that. You know it too." Stacy thought about one of her favorite words, perseverance. Perseverance. Stacy imagined all the words she had yet to meet. New words and new ways to speak up and help others. She'd find them all. No, Mama, there's always tomorrow. The end. In this story, little Stacey Abrahams found out that words have the power, and we all know she uses her words every day to change lives. I hope that together, through perseverance, we can all use our extraordinary words to make a difference too. Families who would like to participate in outdoor Sunday school are now invited to head to the playground.
To participate in today's caring meditation or to ask for pastoral and practical support with difficulties in your life, now is the time to fill out the Joys and Sorrows form. You can find it by scanning the QR code on your screen or here on the slide by visiting firstucolumbus.org/Sunday. If we receive your joy or sorrow in the next few minutes, we'll read it aloud today during the caring meditation later on in the service. You may also complete the form anytime throughout the week to be shared next Sunday and to receive pastoral care and support. Sharing our joys and sorrows and supporting one another is only one way that as a community we lift up each other and hold all that is in our hearts.
Good morning. I'm Tamara Parson. My pronouns are she, they, and I serve as your coordinator for our BIPOC network. The words of bell hooks said to Thich Nhat Hanh, "To me, all the work I do is built on a foundation of loving kindness. Love illuminates matters. And when I write provocative social and cultural criticism that causes readers to stretch their minds, to think beyond set paradigms, I think of that work as love in action. While it may challenge, disturb, and at times even frighten or enrage readers, love is always the place where I begin and end. From childhood into adulthood, we are often taught misguided and false assumptions about the nature of love. Perhaps the most common false assumption about love is that love means we will not be challenged or changed. No doubt this is why people who read about racism, sexism, homophobia, religion, etc., that challenges their set assumptions tend to see that work as harsh rather than loving. You helped me bring together theories of political recovery and spiritual recovery. I have continually sought those paths that would lead to the end of violence and injustice.
Siti Japula, Jesu Japula, Siti Japula, Jesu Japula. Wake up in the moonlight singing, wake up in the moonlight singing. Siti Japula, Jesu Japula, Siti Japula, Jesu Japula. Wake up in the moonlight singing, wake up in the moonlight singing. Siti Japula, Jesu Japula, Siti Japula, Jesu Japula. Wake up in the moonlight singing, wake up in the moonlight singing.
Thank you, Spirit of Life. My name is Reverend Linda Smith, and I'm the Assistant Minister of Pastoral Care here. My pronouns are she, her. Let us listen in on a conversation between Bell Hooks and Thich Nhat Hanh titled Building a Community of Love. Their dialogue helped me to understand better how to navigate the challenging waters of being an anti-racist, and I hope they help you as well. First, let me introduce them. Bell Hooks, born in 1952, died last year, an American author, professor, feminist, and social activist. The focus of Hooks' writing was to explore the intersectionality of race, capitalism, gender, and what she described as their ability to produce and perpetuate systems of oppression and class domination. She published around 40 books. Also an academic, she taught at institutions including Stanford, Yale, and the City College of New York before joining Berea College in Berea, Kentucky in 2004, where a decade later she founded the Bell Hooks Institute, where her papers are archived. Krista Tippett, host of the NPR show On Being, and keynote speaker at the Unitarian Universalist General Assembly in 2016, writes this about Thich Nhat Hanh. Thich Nhat Hanh came to the world's attention in the 1960s when he forsook monastic isolation to be of service to his country as Vietnam was torn apart by war. He was a startling, paradoxical force to the end, tangibly powerful and exquisitely gentle, at once a mystic and a pragmatist. He led the Buddhist delegation to the Paris Peace Talks in 1969. Martin Luther King Jr. nominated him for the Nobel Peace Prize. But the engaged Buddhism for which he was known always defied conventional political calculus. He was banned entry by both North and South Vietnam for decades because he had refused to take sides, even as he worked for peace. He transmuted what he had experienced of chaos and bloodshed in his life and his country into an ability to speak with equal measures of directness and compassion to the many conflicts and bewilderments of contemporary life. In 2005, he was finally able to return to Vietnam for the first time since the 60s, and he died in his monastery home there on January 22nd, 2022. Both Bell Hooks and Thich Nhat Hanh are conversing from a Buddhist perspective that has many parallels with Unitarian Universalist theology. Tamara Parson will read the words of Bell Hooks. Thich Nhat Hanh's responses will be spoken by Amanda Hayes.
As early as 1975, you were sharing, "The way must be in you. The destination also must be in you and not somewhere else. If that kind of self-transformation is being realized in you, you will arrive." The civil rights movement was such a wonderful movement for social justice because the heart of it was love, loving everyone. It was believing that we can always start anew. We can always practice forgiveness. I don't have to hate any person because I can always reconcile. What I'm trying to understand is why are we moving away from this idea of a community of love? What is your thinking about why people are moving away from love and how we can be a part of moving our society towards love?
If love is there in the community, if we've been nourished by the harmony in the community, then we will never move away from love. The reason we might lose this is because we are always looking outside, thinking that the object or action of love is out there. That is why we allow the love, the harmony, the mature understanding to slip away from ourselves. That is why we have to go back to our community and renew it. Then love will grow back, understanding and harmony will grow back.
We are with the Anti-Racist Allies group, and we covenant this group. We covenant that the change begins in each one of us and is reaffirmed in like-minded community. In the moments when one of us in our group struggles, someone else helps us process what we can't. Also, we have each taken an intensive anti-racist training so that we have a common foundational idea to refer to. Many of us, and you, lived through the progress made by the civil rights movement of the 60s, but then the backlash. Here's some history to consider. Abraham Lincoln presented a plan for Reconstruction, including giving black men the right to vote. 3 days later, he was shot dead. Ida B. Wells published an essay about the need for an anti-lynching law. In 1909, she did this and titled her essay, "The Awful Slaughter." The anti-lynching law was finally signed into effect just last month. Black servicemen, after serving both in World War I and World War II, fighting for freedom overseas, came home and asked for freedom here. That put a target on their back. Many were killed or maimed. At last came the Brown versus the Board of Education decision by the Supreme Court in 1954, followed by backlashes both in the North and the South. Then the next year, the awful murder and mutilation of 14-year-old Emmett Till. Then came the March on Washington in 1963, the March for Jobs and Freedom. Next was the bombing of the Birmingham church in which 4 little girls were killed attending Sunday school. Then Malcolm X's assassination. Then more assassinations, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., President John F. Kennedy, Robert F. Kennedy. Finally, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965, but now they've been negated by white rage and resistance. I can't go on, but you all know that the killing and heartbreak does go on. As Ibram X. Kendi points out in Stamped, Racism, Anti-Racism, and You, for years, the mere notion of anti-racist ideas got purposely jumbled into hateful extremism. The Black Power movement's goals were twisted, just as the hashtag Black Lives Matter movements are being twisted today. The Anti-Racist Allies group is not the first group in this congregation formed to do anti-racist work. We are building on the work of others. Our intent is to study and push back against any backlash that prevents BIPOC, that is, Black, Indigenous, people of color, equality. And of equal importance is that we white people followed the lead of BIPOC people rather than directing the pushback, letting Black and people of color direct what they want to be done. Now let's return to the conversation between bell hooks and Thich Nhat Hanh.
It was not until I was in my early 20s, writing feminist theory, that I began to think deeply about love in relation to domination. During my first years in college, Martin Luther King's message of love as the path to ending racism and healing the wounds of racial domination had been replaced by a Black Power movement stressing militant resistance. This new movement called on us to harden our hearts, to wage war against our enemies. Loving our enemies, militant leaders told us, made us weak and easy to subjugate. And many turned their backs on King's message. Just as the energy of a racially biased civil rights liberation struggle was moving away from the call of love, the women's movement also launched a critique of love, calling on females to forget about love so that we might seize power. Those of us who still longed to hold on to love looked to religions as the site of redemption. My own seeking led me to a work of Buddhist monk Martin Luther King had met and had been touched by, Thich Nhat Hanh. At last, I had found a world where spirituality and politics could meet, where there was no separation. Indeed, in this world, all efforts to end domination, to bring peace and justice, were spiritual practice. I was no longer torn between political struggle and spiritual practice. And here was the radical teacher, a Vietnamese monk living in exile, courageously declaring that if you have to choose between Buddhism and peace, then you must choose peace.
Community is the core of everything. A community where there should be harmony and peace and understanding. That is something created by our daily life together. If love is there in the community, if we've been nourished by the harmony in the community, then we will never move away from love. The reason we might lose this is because we are always looking outside, thinking that the object or action of love is out there. That is why we allow the love, the harmony, the mature understanding to slip away from ourselves. That is why we have to go back to our community and renew it. Then love will grow back. Understanding and harmony will grow back. That's the first thing. The second thing is that we ourselves need love. It's not only society, the world outside, that needs love. But we can't expect that love to come from outside of us. We should ask the question whether we are capable of loving ourselves as well as others. Are we treating our body kindly by the way we eat, by the way we drink, by the way we work? Are we treating ourselves with enough joy and tenderness and peace? Or are we feeding ourselves with toxins that we get from the market, the spiritual, intellectual, entertainment market? Loving ourselves means loving our community. When we are capable of loving ourselves, nourishing ourselves properly, not intoxicating ourselves, we are already protecting and nourishing society. Because in the moment when we are able to smile, to look at ourselves with compassion, our world begins to change.
The Anti-Racist Allies Group are intentional about educating ourselves about both the micro and the macro aspects of being an anti-racist. We handle mistakes made with compassion and understanding so as to nurture a small community of love. And we do talk about our mistakes and our questions, and we study history. One outstanding example of learning from history is the work of Reverend Dr. William Barber II. He defines 3 reconstructions and analyzes the backlash in order to work, to change. He defines 3 reconstructions, the first being the Civil War, the second being the Civil Rights Movement of the 60s, and right now. And right now, he's busy organizing demands of poor and working class people at the grassroots level. And then he'll take those demands to Washington, D.C. this June. Let's return to the dialogue.
I think one of the most wonderful books that Martin Luther King wrote was Strength to Love. I always liked it because of the word strength, which counters the Western notion of love as easy. Instead, Martin Luther King said that you must have courage to love, that you have to have a profound will to do what is right to love, and that does not come easy.
Martin Luther King was among us as a brother, as a friend, as a leader. He was able to maintain that love alive. He tried to transmit his insight and his love to the community, but maybe we have not received it enough. He was trying to transmit the best things to us, his goodness, his love, his non-duality. But because we had clung so much to him as a person, we did not bring the essence of what he was teaching into our community. So now that he's no longer here, we are at a loss. We have to be aware how crucial that transmission he was making was not the transmission of power, of authority, of position, but the transmission of love.
Exactly. It was not a transmission of personality. Part of why I've started writing about love is feeling, as you say, that our culture is forgetting what was taught, what he taught. We name more and more streets and schools after him, but that's almost irrelevant because what is to be remembered is that strength to love. That's where we have to draw our courage from. The spirit of love, not the image of Martin Luther King. That is so hard in the West because we are such an image and personality-driven culture.
Yes, I understand. In fact, the true teacher is within us. A good teacher is someone who can help you to go back and touch the true teacher within, because you already have the insight within you. In Buddhism, we call it Buddha nature. You don't need someone to transfer Buddha nature to you, but maybe you need a friend who can help you touch that nature of awakening and understanding working in you.
I think that's exactly the kind of justice Martin Luther King spoke about. A justice that was for everyone, whether they are equal or not. Sometimes in life, all things are not equal. So what does it mean to have justice when there's no equality? A parent can be just toward a child, even though they're not equal. I think this is often, again, misunderstood in the West, where people feel that there can be no justice unless everything is the same.
Is justice possible without equality?
Justice is possible without equality. I believe because of compassion and understanding. If I have compassion, then I have more than you, which is unequal. I will still do the just thing by you.
Makes sense.
Before I came here, I had been struggling with the question of anger. I always feel very depressed when I have anger. I had to come to a point of despair because I had so much difficulty with my anger.
You want to be human. Be angry. It's okay. But not to practice is not okay. To be angry, that is very human. And to learn how to smile at your anger and make peace with your anger, that is the whole thing, the meaning of the practice, of the learning. By taking a look at your anger, it can be transformed into the kind of energy that you need, understanding and compassion. It is with negative energy that you can make positive energy. A flower, although beautiful, will become compost someday. But if you know how to transform the compost back into the flower, then you don't have to worry about your anger because you know how to handle it, to embrace, to recognize, and transform it. So this is what is possible.
I think this is what people misunderstand about Martin Luther King saying to love your enemies. My students tell me, we don't want to love. We're tired of being loving. And I say to them, if you're tired of being loving, then you haven't really been loving, because when you are loving, you have more strength. We grow stronger in the act of loving. And lastly, what about fear? Because I think many white people approach Black people or Asian people not with hatred or anger, but with fear. What can love do for that fear?
Fear is born from ignorance. We think that the other person is trying to take something away from us. But if we look deeply, we see that the desire of the other person is exactly our own desire. The desire to have peace, to be able to have a chance to live. The only answer to fear is more understanding. And there is no understanding if there is no effort to look more deeply, to see what is there in our heart and in the heart of the other person. The Buddha always reminds us that our afflictions, including our fear and our desiring, are born from our ignorance. That is why, in order to dissipate fear, we have to remove the wrong perception.
And what if people perceive rightly and still act unjustly?
They're not able yet to apply their insight in their daily life. They need a community to remind them. Sometimes you have a flash of insight, but it's not strong enough to survive. In the practice of Buddhism, samadhi is the power to maintain insight alive in every moment, so that every speech, every word, every act will bear the nature of that insight.
I think that we best realize love in community. This is something I have had to work with myself, because the intellectual tradition of the West is very individualistic. It is not community-based. The intellectual is often thought of as a person who is alone and cut off from the world. So I've had to practice being willing to leave the space of my study to be in community, to work in community, and to be changed by community.
Right. And then we learn to operate as a community and not as individuals. In Plum Village, that is exactly what we try to do. We are brothers and sisters living together. We try to operate like cells in one body.
I think this is the love that we seek in the new millennium, which is the love experienced in community beyond self.
So please, live that truth and disseminate that truth with your writing, with your speaking. It will be helpful to maintain that kind of view and action.
And thank you for your open-hearted example.
I believe Buddha nature is what we affirm in our first principle, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Samadhi is embodied in each of our principles, but most directly in our third, acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregation. Plum Village is the meditation community built in France by Buddhists in exile from Vietnam. We, as they, are teachers to each other about racism, fear, ignorance, and anger, about friendship, compassion, kindness, understanding, and love. The true teacher is within us, yes. Community helps us transform fear and anger into the energy of love when we get off track or need a hand. And as Bell Hooks wrote, quote, "We best realize love in community. I think this is the love that we seek in the new millennium, which is the love experienced in community beyond self." We hold this as our ideal in this congregation. And the anti-racist allies group is small, but we want it to grow. We are advocating the adoption of that our congregation adopt the eighth principle in addition to our 7 we already covenant. This is how the eighth principle reads currently. Quote, "We, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promote, journeying towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions," unquote. If you're interested in joining us, please sign up at the jam table in Beach Hall. Part of the anti-racist path we offer is the 6-session training called Living the Pledge. We'll offer that again this fall, and if you're interested in taking that training, you can sign up for it at the jam table today in Beach Hall. The Anti-Racist Allies Group, small but growing. We notice, we check our perceptions, we act, we reflect, we act. Thank you, and now let us join our voices together as we sing number 1028 in the Teal hymnal, Fire of Commitment, and Michaela's going to lead us. Please stand as you are able.
Sets our mind and soul ablaze when our
And now for our caring meditation. The words of Bodhisattva vow, adapted. Free from suffering. May all sentient beings be well and enjoy the root of happiness. Free from suffering and the root of suffering. May they not be separated from the joy beyond sorrow. May they dwell in spacious equanimity, free from craving, fear, and ignorance. I invite this morning's pastoral listeners, Bob Mills and Kathleen Fowler, to share the caring cards for this week and the joys and sorrows that were submitted this morning. We do encourage you to visit the caring table in Beach Hall after the service to sign caring cards, whether or not you know the people. This longtime tradition of signing cards in person is an important outreach to members and friends. Even if there are no cards to be signed, you could still stop and say hello to the volunteers. Bob and Kathleen, thank you.
There are 3 caring cards and announcements this morning that came in during the week. We send Barb F. healing thoughts and concerns. She will have a left shoulder repair on Tuesday, April 12th. This is corrective surgery for a previous procedure done in May of 2021. This outpatient procedure will be done at Ohio Health in Grove City. We send our congratulations to Joe F., son of Shannon F., and Karina, who were married in Alhambra, California, on March 26. They were joined by dozens of family members and friends from all over the U.S. and Mexico. It was a fun, beautiful, and heartwarming celebration. Nina L. was discharged from the hospital on Wednesday, April 6, following a stroke several weeks ago. She is now at Reunion Rehab Hospital in Dublin. She is encouraged with the progress that she is making.
Then we had one joy that came in this morning during our service. This is from Michaela B. She reports that she is thankful to be here in person singing with her wonderful choir. She says she loves her people.
As I ring our temple bell, I invite you into a brief time of silence. Use this time to reflect, imagine, pray, or simply breathe in and out as you are in this beloved community. I will ring the bell a second time as we continue our service.
We are awake, and we are a beloved community in the making. One of the ways that we help ourselves and the world is by sharing our monetary resources. This sharing of resources as a community means that some of us are just scraping by right now and have already made a great contribution to this community just by being present. And some of us are thriving financially and can challenge ourselves to give more. Our offering this morning will be shared with the Friends of the Lower Olentangy Watershed, known as FLOW. FLOW is our April Share the Plate recipient. Let's take a moment to learn more about FLOW from Sarah Gallagher, their service event coordinator.
Hi, my name is Sarah Gallagher, and I'm the service event coordinator with FLOW, Friends of the Lower Olentangy Watershed. We're a watershed group here in Columbus that was started in 1997. This year we're celebrating our 25th anniversary. I wanted to thank you for making FLOW the April Share the Plate recipient, and I wanted to tell you a little bit about FLOW. FLOW focuses on a 32-mile stretch of the Olentangy River and its tributaries, all the way from the Delaware Dam to Confluence Park, where it enters the Sayada. Our mission is to keep the Olentangy River and its tributaries clean and safe for all to enjoy through public education, volunteer activities, and coordination with local decision makers. One of our projects, about 10 years ago, was actually right here on your own property, and it was working on this rain garden that you have here. Other things that we do, as well as rain gardens, is we have 2 tree nurseries. We work in wetlands, pollinator gardens, native trees that we plant, thousands of them. We give away thousands of trees to first graders in the watershed, as well as having litter cleanups regularly. You can follow us on Instagram at FLOW Columbus, and you can follow us on Facebook at Friends of the Lower Olentangy Watershed. If you go to flowohio.org, you can learn so much more about FLOW. And I wanted to thank you so much for your support again, and we hope you will join us someday soon at a cleanup or other service event. Thank you.
Waters were ready to flow during the taping of that video. You may also contribute in person with a credit card at the greeters table as you leave the worship center or at the jam table in Beach Hall. Thank you for your generosity. closing words this morning are from Ibram X. Kendi. There will come a time when we will love humanity, when we will gain the courage to fight for an equitable society for our beloved humanity, knowing intelligently that when we fight for humanity, we are fighting for ourselves. There will become a time, maybe, just maybe, that time is now. Please rise now as you are willing and able to join us in singing number 1057 in the teal hymnal, Go Lifted Up. Spirit of Life Choir.
If you're participating online, I invite you to bring your chalice closer so that we can extinguish the flame together. After our service has, oh, and you may be seated. Sorry. After our service has concluded, please join us in Beach Hall for in-person coffee hour or on Zoom for a virtual coffee hour. In either location, there will be conversation and reflection together. This week's online coffee hour is hosted by our Justice Action Ministry. To get to our virtual coffee hour, click on the new link in this morning's email. And now please join me in speaking our vision statement as we extinguish our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of vision. As we go forth, let us heal and transform ourselves and our world through reason and love. Our chalice is extinguished. Please remain seated as Nathan plays our postlude. We will look forward to seeing you at coffee hour.